it is a good example of when violating best practices actually worked out.
Can you design a dream business and build a life that has room for other passions? Well, Rachel Hochhauser and Jena Wolfe have done it with their brand Piecework Puzzles, offering delightful, maximalist puzzles for every mood, whim, and personality.
We saw like people kind of copying this style, and I think it's grown a lot.
In just 6 years, they've sold over 300,000 puzzles, all while maintaining other careers.
Took on a full-time role at Goop Kitchen, leading the marketing teams.
It took working in creative services and now Piecework to understand how to properly pitch and sell a book.
Today, we're chatting about bootstrapping a business, building a framework that enables you to pursue other interests, and how to learn from and work with other founders to grow together.
We listen to each other and we're willing to argue with each other.
Hi everyone, welcome to Shopify Masters. I'm your host, Serena Smith, and this is your companion for starting and scaling a business. Jena, Rachel, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
The two of you have said that you started Piecework kind of as an experiment. What does that mean?
It was a total lark is what it was. Jena and I ran a creative agency that we co-founded for years. So we were in creative services. And as Jena knows well, client services can be stressful and overwhelming. And so I separately with my then boyfriend, now husband, had booked a cabin for a weekend away in Yosemite with the intention of totally turning off my phone and computer and getting away from it all. But it rained for the whole weekend. And so we were stuck inside and there's no phone service. And I discovered this old dusty closet of jigsaws. I was not a puzzle person growing up. I wasn't one of those families that like did them at Christmas time, but I spent like 3 days nonstop working on puzzles in front of a fireplace, and it was so meditative and nice. And I came back and I was like, Jena, we have an idea. Yeah. So she thought I was crazy at first, but we were working on puzzles all the time and really enjoying it. And we felt like there was none out there that really spoke to our own taste and aesthetic. And, we worked in design and visual identity and branding. And we're like, why can't we apply this skill set to puzzles? But we really intended it to be almost like this creative side project, not a business or a brand in its own right, and just kind of went for it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Rach basically pitched the idea to me, and I was like, this is genius. Like, nothing like this exists right now. We're living in this world where everything we choose is so branded. The toothpaste, the toothbrush, the soap, the everything. Like, it takes forever to make a decision. And yet, when it comes to puzzles, pre-Piecework, I feel like they were, like, very stale, right? And they were, like, embarrassing, weird
jars
creative,
of buttons, watercolor kittens.
Totally.
Like weird puppies, and like you never wanted to like display them, or you didn't feel like it represented who you were as a consumer. So I felt like there was this opportunity to really be a brand forward puzzle company.
Were you a puzzle person at the time?
Yeah, I like doing puzzles to like relax and unwind and take a break from screens because we were working in advertising and creative services. So Zoom calls and making decks and spreadsheets and emails, like we're constantly on our phones or behind screens. So it was a really nice break. It's very meditative. And as a child, I loved puzzles. I did so many.
Me too. I'm very grateful for Piecework coming into the world, because now Piecework has been, it exists in this influential space in the puzzle universe. It's hard to remember that at the time, you're right, it was like all these like antiquated kind of granny-ish designs, and we all just kind of like took for granted that was the only option. I guess maybe because you're engaging in this kind of lo-fi activity to begin with. There's something very fun about the juxtaposition of doing something that feels more lo-fi, but modernizing the design and bringing that in a different kind of way. Like, what was your design philosophy going in, and how did you know that you wanted to differentiate yourselves?
Sort of a twofold answer with the puzzles, because you have the puzzle art itself and then the packaging, and both of them are differentiated from what's out there. Every Piecework puzzle is meant to be almost like a book or like a universe or world that feels very themed that you're stepping into. Each puzzle has its own title. They're down the spine. They can grow like a collection on your shelf. So that was like the puzzle art. We created it all from scratch ourselves, for better or worse. I mean, some of those early photo shoots were literally in my grandmother's garage, and we would didn't actually have a shot list for our first puzzle art shoot, which is just amazing in hindsight. We just went into it with a ton of props we thought were cool and figured it out. That netted out in our first 4 SKUs we ever launched, which is astonishing to me now because I don't think we could pull that off again if we tried. And then the second part of that was the packaging. We wanted to do really artful, design-forward packaging that wholesale would want to display, but also that instead of competing with, the puzzles that are for sale at the drugstores or the big box stores, that were more in line with a luxury candle. So something that you would want to gift someone, something you'd be proud to kind of set out on your coffee table or on your shelf, more like an art book than, a traditional box for a game.
And do you find that people are actually retaining the packaging and displaying it?
Yeah.
Using it for other purposes?
I think it's a huge part of our success, not necessarily using it for other purposes so much as displaying it in their homes, taking pictures of it and posting it on social. I mean, we have grown only organically on social, and I think it's just because they are so friendly to the camera.
Yeah, like merchandising them in your home, styling them on a shelf. We thought about every angle of the puzzle. We thought about the typography, we thought about the color, we thought about, of course, the puzzle art. But I think no matter how you stack them, they look really beautiful. And we were really thoughtful about that because we love that part of brand building. So we got to bring it to this project at the time.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? I mean, you both had a creative agency that you were running together prior to that. You come from that world. What did you understand inherently about brand building and brand identity that you were able to utilize as you were bringing Piecework to life?
I mean, so much from like the strategy and the conception and the positioning of it. What else exists in the market? How are we going to do something that's different and special? We knew right away what we were offering and how it was going to be, very unique to the market. We just talked about this, right? Everything was like fuddy-duddy and the packaging wasn't something that you wanted to display. So we knew that we were going to do that really differently. And then we also really thought about like the brand personality and voice and tone and how it would come to life with colors and with language and the words that we would use, the energy it would have. We were doing that work for clients all the time. And a lot of the time, like, we didn't love what our clients were doing. So we had to like fake it. But with Piecework, because we were the client and we were the creator, we got to, do whatever we wanted and really lean in.
That has been the best part is we are our own client, so we don't get caught in 25 rounds of approval with, 35 people and a bunch of boardrooms. We can do what we want, and for better or worse, we've made mistakes too, but at the end of the day, it's our creative playpen.
As satisfying as I'm sure it has been running your agency, it's frustrating when you have something that you creatively believe in, and then because there are so many cooks in the kitchen and so many rounds of approvals, you see something get like diluted and pivoted so many times that by the end, it's like, was it the thing that anybody wanted in the end? And with this, you get to retain full creative autonomy, which I can imagine has to be very gratifying.
At the time, everyone was doing like really similar kind of websites and like look and feel of like super beige on beige and lots of whites and just following trends. And at our agency, clients kind of want that too. They sort of gravitate towards like what culture is telling them and what they're seeing represented on like Instagram and whatever. But for us, we knew right away we wanted this to be super bold and colorful and maximalist and have like competing colors and like ugly cool colors and use long words. We just got to do whatever we wanted and we were so authentic to the vision that we had. And I think it really resonated with people, right? It felt real, it felt interesting and different. And then we saw like lots of fast follows and people kind of copying this style. And I think it's grown a lot. Like this maximalist world that we created has become so much more popular. And I like to think we have a little bit of a hand in that.
I'll give you a really specific example. As women, there's a lot of quote unquote rules you're given in business. One of them is don't use too many exclamation points in emails because that's something that women do. They feel they have to modify their speech and their tone. And it's something I'm aware of when writing an email. For Piecework, we went the opposite direction and we used not just one exclamation point all the time, but 3 or 4 or 5. Like we leaned into that. We wanted to go crazy with exclamation points. And it's a hyper-specific detail, but it speaks to, we just want to do things the way we feel like doing them. That feels really authentic to who this brand is. And I think Jen and I both know who the brand DNA of this, like the back of our own hands.
I mean, yesterday I sent Rachel on Instagram, I got this ad of a horse toaster Actually, several. It was like a carousel of different horse toasters. And I
You mean like
wrote it to her.
toasters in the shape of a horse?
Yeah. And I was like, I think we could sell this. And she goes, I already sent it to Sam, our head of like merchandise. And she's like, or our head buyer. And she's like, but I think it's AI. I don't even think it's real. But like we both knew that this weird, fake, potentially horse toaster was us.
Yes.
Oh my God.
If
You
Piecework
guys
were
are
a
dialed
toaster.
in.
Yeah.
You're dialed in. But it's like, it's interesting because we live in this like algorithmic universe, right? Where you're just fed something over and over and over again. And then you can't really find anymore like where genuinely your own sense of style or taste ends. And it's just something that's been fed to you repeatedly. Like, how did you know now maximalism is in vogue? At the time, it was, as you guys were saying, Grace, like, how did you know in that moment, like, that's actually just not what we want to do?
A lot of our inspiration has come from earlier decades. And I think, maximalism isn't something that's new. It comes from earlier points in time. So when we continue to be inspired, I mean, a lot of our puzzles, you look at them and you can point to the exact like place and era that they're calling back to. And that was just a part of our inspiration for the brand as well.
I'm trying to remember like our initial inspiration deck, which had like Iris Apfel with like the huge glasses and like
over the top interior decor has been a big one for us.
My late father-in-law, Tom Wolfe, wearing all white suits and having like hats and like being in the city. Just like people that were very like beat to the tune of their own drum was something we used to talk about a lot as our muse. This idea of like someone who just knows who they are and has this different vibe and is like very confident being that person. And that's what makes them cool.
And that's the spirit that you feel like Piecework is embodying.
Yeah.
It feels like you have these rabid fans, right? These customers that come back to you time and again and again. Do you see the link between your approach to design and that customer loyalty?
Like I said, each one of our puzzles is a world, and it feels like you have the same fandoms for books and their series, and we have some of our customers like, what are you going to come up with next? What weird, wacky world is your next puzzle going to be? And hopefully, we hit the mark most of the time. It's fun. The brainstorming and product development aspect of the job is definitely the best part because we get to really go wide.
Yeah, how fun. Like, you're playing. You talking about it being an experiment and not approaching it from the perspective of, we want this to be this life-changing business opportunity for us or for it to become our full-time gig even. Do you think from a mentality perspective that that's allowed you a different kind of freedom than if you had put more pressure on what this needed to be?
Absolutely. So Jena and I were in a really unique position when we started Piecework because I think most founders and entrepreneurs very quickly need to put pressure on the business to pay themselves and make a living. And we were running the creative agency simultaneously and making our money there, which meant that we didn't have to go out for investment in the company, and that shifted the entire dynamic because there was no one we really answered to. It's what enabled us to have the creative playpen, but we're both hyper aware that that's not the case in reality for most founders. It's a privileged position to be in, and the flip side is that, we worked on the company for years without paying ourselves.
Right. You worked on the company for years without paying yourselves. You've remained bootstrapped, right? You haven't taken on any outside investment, so you have full autonomy. Have you always retained some kind of outside work, both of you? Or has Piecework ever been the full-time gig?
No, we've always had other projects. Piecework is very much synthesized into our other work, but we have an incredible team that works on it, and we've always both been involved in different ways, but it is not our full-time thing.
What do you mean when you say that it's always been synthesized with your other work? Can you talk about how the things dovetail?
Yeah, absolutely. So Major Studio was our creative agency, and our other two co-founders there do all the design for Piecework and all the packaging design. Jen, I don't know if you want to speak to, your current endeavors, but Jen leads marketing at Goop
Kitchen.
Goop Kitchen. Yeah, important.
Yeah, I mean, we started Piecework when we were running our agency. That's where we made our money. That's where our income was from. But we were both feeling really tired and burnt out by working in client services. And, it's just such a grind if you're familiar with it. And, we'd been doing it for over 15 years. We were itching to do something on our own. And it was, being able to juggle between the two, like let us have so much autonomy with Piecework. I feel like you either have a trust fund and you come from like incredible wealth and you can like start these companies, or you have to raise money. And we didn't have to do either of those things because we were supporting ourselves with another business. But like I said, we both really wanted to get out of client services. So, over time, Rach has stepped in more as the day-to-day of Piecework. She also just recently sold and has her first novel coming out in March. I'll let her speak to. Very proud of her. So she's doing that. She's a part-time part-time writer, part-time Piecework, brand leader and steward and CEO. And I recently, I guess in March, took on a full-time role at Goop Kitchen leading the marketing team. So I have this very intense full-time job now that I'm loving, but I'm still very involved in Piecework. We're still creative partners and best friends and talk all the time. So it's just been how it's worked for us.
It's very non-traditional.
It's non-traditional. Both of us are also like crazy worker bees and very type A and love to have a lot of pots on the stove and things going on, across our personal and professional lives. So it's fun to code switch between multiple big projects.
Fun to code switch. And it strikes me that there is like almost a symbiotic relationship where maybe your work at Goop is sort of triggering something else in your brain that actually can serve this business as well. And your work as a writer can serve the work that you're doing here as well. Do you find that that's the case?
Absolutely. I think there's a ton of synthesis. Like Jena hosted a Goop Kitchen dinner a couple weeks ago, and magically our Piecework tomato cocktail napkins were somehow on the table at this influencer event. And for me, I've done writing for years, but I think it took actually working in creative services and now Piecework to understand how to properly pitch and sell a book. I was always writing, but the business side of being an author, I didn't have that skill set before. So I got to develop that via Piecework, and that's been hugely beneficial for my writing.
I want to talk about your writing in just a minute, but it's kind of like a hackneyed piece of advice you often hear: don't go into business with your friend. Mm. It seems like you're absolutely the exception to that rule, and maybe that's a rule that's meant to be debunked altogether. What's your take on it?
I think it depends on the friend. Jena and I first met studying abroad in Paris in a writing program through NYU, where we both went to undergrad. And we were friends for a long time before we started working together. But I have friends that I could not work with. Jena and I work together so well. And we have a ton of professional respect for each other. And I think that's a big part of it. We're also both type A, and we listen to each other, and we're willing to argue with each other. I think those are all really important parts of our partnership.
I've worked with friends and not had it work out also. So I definitely hear that advice, and I've been burned by that. And I've lost friendships, or I've taken, years off of speaking to people who are really important to me. So it can be really fraught. I think what's different about our working relationship and friendship from some of those past experiences is that we're both kind of equally as committed and hardworking as one another. And that creates a really nice even playing field where we really try to divide and conquer responsibility, tasks, and independently. So we're like adding to the sum of the work effort and then pulling each other in, for support or for collaboration and brainstorm at the right moments too. But for me, at least, that was the big difference. Is like I've worked with people who just don't want to put in as much time or who have very different ideas about what roles and responsibilities we each have. And we're so aligned there. We're both willing to give so much. And also, like, when the other person's feeling burnout, like, we'll compensate and we'll go back and forth. So to me, that's been the big difference.
It's a really good marriage.
Yeah.
My husband and his best friend started a company together too. And it was so frequent that they were given that, people were like, are you sure? This is going to annihilate the two of you. And it's like they're 6 years in and they're better best friends than they were in the beginning, because if it works and you know how to work through conflict with each other and you know how to communicate and you really respect the hell out of each other, it's only going to make your relationship richer, right? That's just a love letter to the two of you. You started in puzzles and found your footing there, and the napkins have become this total hit. But to me, you have to explain to me like how you went from puzzles to napkins, because it doesn't feel like the most natural extension of my brain.
It is an excellent question. And it is I think also a good example of when violating best practices actually worked out, because I was talking to a client and they were a puzzle company. I would never think to advise them to go into something like napkins. But essentially what happened was that we were launching a tomato puzzle last summer. And to make a big moment out of this tomato themed puzzle, which is called Tomato, we wanted to do something called Tomato World, where we had all these tomato themed products all around it and had its own like microsite, and just make this like tomato moment, which I think feels like that was also a cultural moment that we played a role in, or were participated in, I should say, where tomatoes were suddenly everywhere. But when we were stalking Tomato World and looking for products, there weren't a ton out there. And a lot of the ones that were out there weren't to our taste or didn't really match in the way that we wanted them to. We have many existing manufacturing relationships, and we said, well, okay, kind of similar to how we decided to make 4 puzzles, no big deal. We'll just make some tomato-themed products to throw into Tomato World. So we made tomato napkins, and they did really, really well, which was surprising to us, and they were fairly easy to produce. So we ended up making sardine napkins next, and then those did really well. So it just then has since become this extensive line of napkins and turned into this whole other arm of our business, making 100% linen cocktail napkins. And now they're really big in wholesale. They're doing great for us.
Wow. How big a piece of the pie, or I guess I should say puzzle, are the napkins at this point?
Pretty considerable in wholesale. They definitely are encouraging us to continue expanding into new product verticals.
You also have a number of things on the site that are not of your own design. How did you make the decision to expand into sort of these curated offerings, and what's your approach to the curation process?
As Piecework is known for these really maximalist puzzle worlds filled with props. And the prop sourcing was a big part of our life and work. And we work with great people that also do that. And it was just so fun to be able to shoot and see everything. And we found we had customers reaching out to us about some of the objects that were in the puzzles, asking what they were or where they could get them. So it felt like a really natural extension to start pulling those puzzle worlds out above and beyond the puzzle, not just items that you see in the puzzle artwork, but things that feel really thematically linked. And the other component was that we find that our products, because of the packaging, because they're just a really fun gift object, people really shop Piecework for gifting. And we thought, well, they should be able to shop even more giftable products. So we essentially created these edits on our website that are really shoppable and highly themed by occasion or by themes such as tomato, like we were talking about, where, everything kind of fits into a world. And I know as a gift receiver, I would love to open up a nice gift wrap box and have like a bunch of quirky tomato themed products in it. It's just fun when things go together in that way.
Has it changed your understanding of what the business is?
Yeah, it's a great way to get data. We can see what types of products customers are interested in, what they gravitate towards. We're constantly surprised by things that oversell or sell through or undersell. We think something is so wonderful and it just doesn't move. It's also a great way to drive, more traffic and increase AOV. It's just been beneficial across the board.
And it's also helpful for like incubating new products. I mean, getting to know what people are buying, if that's something that we can make on our own, or we have ideas about how to, develop a product in that category. It's helpful. And just to double back on something that Rach said, I think we were really clear from the beginning that we didn't want to only operate in like the puzzle and games market. We really wanted to be in this like broader gifting market and compete with a bottle of wine or like something that you might bring to someone's home for like a housewarming, right? It's like there's a much bigger playing field there. Mm-hmm. So we were conscious of that from the very beginning, and that was our hypothesis with this product and was proved correct. So we kept pushing that in a few different ways in the marketplace, in the napkins, and other products that we tried that weren't as successful as the napkins.
What was something that you thought would be a hit and wasn't?
We launched candles. They did fine, but they weren't the same breakout success as the napkins. And I think that was in part because we went too soon. It was a good learning moment for us of when we, were rushing to get a product to a market in time for a certain arbitrary deadline versus slowing down and getting it to the place we really wanted it to be.
And is that from a quality perspective, you think?
They were really high quality and we loved the scents. We just went about it in kind of a way that was too expensive. The margins weren't there for us. And, if I'm being bluntly honest, I think from a design perspective, we wanted to push them just 15% further than where we got them.
Do you think they'll have a second life at some point?
Who's to say? We do have customers that are very upset that they're sold out and want them to come back. So there's probably something worth playing with there.
Okay, well, I'll have to stay tuned for the second life of the candles and the horse toaster, which it sounds
I'll
like
send it to you.
we will be seeing on your website at some point.
Horse toaster is not our idea. We have to be clear, but they're pretty stinking cute.
Ridiculous.
Amazing. So the two of you came to this with an understanding of design and brand building, but I would imagine that there was a lot that you did not know about, like how to manufacture puzzles.
We knew nothing.
How did you approach the process of trying to find a manufacturer, how to even have those conversations with people?
Not in any way that I would recommend to anyone else. We actually worked backwards. So we started by looking at manufacturers of other puzzle companies and ones that we really respected their quality level. That was really important to us as people who worked on puzzles. We wanted to make sure that we had extra thick pieces, that the pieces, snapped into each other really well. There's all types of quality control with puzzles that as a consumer you never think about, but then you start diving into puzzles and you're thinking about things like puzzle dust.
The glare
like
issue.
The glare, yeah. So we worked backwards and we found a domestic manufacturer that was willing to take us on for a really small order. And initially that went really well, but about 6 months after we launched, we hit the pandemic and suddenly demand for puzzles skyrocketed, which was great for us as a company, but not great for us from a manufacturing perspective because our domestic manufacturer dropped us because they had bigger clients who had huge POs and they wanted to fulfill their bigger clients' POs.
What on earth did you do in that moment?
Panicked, pulled our hair out. No, at that point, we brought on a consultant to help us source a new manufacturer abroad. And at that point, we moved our production abroad. There's obviously a lot of conversations about production and where you do your production at this moment in time. And for us, at that exact point in time, we found that it was not a cost-saving measure, but we did find that our puzzles increased in quality. It was not, driven by the need to increase margin or anything like that.
I mean, that was sort of our only option. Like, it's not like there's that many puzzle manufacturers.
There's not a ton of puzzle manufacturers in the U.S. It's a niche marketplace.
We prioritize quality, timeliness,
and a manufacturer who'd work with a company of our size.
Do you have any advice? The path to success as a founder and a small business is paved with mistakes, costly mistakes. Do you have any advice for other founders in terms of how they might be able to circumvent some of the early mistakes you made in vis-a-vis manufacturing?
Jenna does something that I've always admired called advice tours. And what it is when we come up across an issue or a problem we don't know how to solve, she'll schedule a series of 15-minute calls with friends and friends of friends or, people that work in adjacent industries and just talk to them about the problem. And I've found that we, via her advice tours, always have a bit more clarity afterward. And you usually find someone who has, more information or someone to connect you with that can help out. So I guess my advice is ask for help. I think as a founder, you often are kind of overburdened and isolated and feeling like a lot is on your shoulders. And whenever and wherever you can, go to people, be open about your problems and see what they can come up with because they might help you come at the problem from a different direction.
Yeah, I love an advice tour. I think most successful founders know this. Like, nobody knows what they're doing ever, anywhere, for the most part. So, you just have to figure it out. You have to make yourself a process. You have to make yourself a plan. As a type A person, I feel so much calm when I have a checklist or a plan, and I usually make them for myself, right? So just structure your problem for yourself and then tackle it. And I think that gives us both a lot of stability and sense of direction when you feel directionless. These are the things we're going to do to try to figure this out. We're going to document our progress. We're going to meet on it. We're going to talk about it. and like some clarity will come.
I feel like there's a beautiful theme that I'm seeing surface here, which is that, like, in part because the two of you have retained a real connection to your outside life and your outside work, that you seem to have this relationship with just like pulling in inspiration, pulling in advice, pulling in ideas from places that are like far outside the world of just the universe that you're operating within, and how valuable that can be, right? Like this advice tour, it sounds like you're not just asking people who are directly in the world of puzzles, you're just going and asking smart, thoughtful people who know things about things to see what they might know about this.
100%. I mean, whether it's getting advice about a Shopify site or Klaviyo or another tool, and having friends who are running CPG businesses who have launched at, big stores. Like there's so many ways to connect with other founders or designers or photographers, whatever you're trying to troubleshoot, and either, reaching out to people or like sending a cold email. Like if you have a company and people know who you are, you send it from your Instagram and say like, hey, I'm a fan. Like would love to chat with you. Would love to send you a puzzle, but also like ask you a few questions. Like people want to help. And there's usually a way you can help them in that conversation or later, very soon after. So yeah, that's always been part of our process. And I think the other thing, this is sort of like a different conversation, maybe we'll get there, but like Piecework was also built on brand partnerships, and doing collaborations with other smaller brands, medium brands, large brands, white labeling products to brands. So like we're constantly overlapping with other businesses and like figuring out the common ground between our two brands and meeting great people who became, some of the folks on our advice tours.
There's the exciting component of doing brand partnerships and collaborations, and that you just get to like work with other people that you love and respect. But it sounds like you're also speaking to maybe this like kind of osmosis where you get to pick up tips and practices from the ways that their businesses are functioning as well.
Yes, 100%. I mean, one of our early partnerships was with Mod, which is a sexual wellness brand. The founder, Eva, became a friend early on. She's someone I've reached out to too many times. I've literally apologized to her. And she's since started a great podcast all about people asking her for advice. She was like, check out my podcast. No, she's amazing. We partnered with Great Jones, with Crate and Barrel, with New York Magazine. One of the first, at least, was with Goop, with Broccoli Magazine. Like we got to meet so many different creative, interesting people. Partnering is a great way to expand your brand to a new audience, to push yourself creatively, to think about new business models and like lines of revenue, and also just to meet great people that can become part of your network.
One thing we've really learned from doing our partnerships, though, is you're going to want to go into every partnership being really clear about what you want to get out of it, and it can't be everything. So some partnerships are for, an exchange and brand equity. Some are about growing your audience. Some are, more focused on revenue. But you can't get everything from a partner, and it does have to be a value exchange of some kind. So thinking about what you have to offer and what you need in return is really critical to both parties being happy with the outcome.
Are there times in collaborations where it's ultimately felt like there was a mismatch?
We would never do a collaboration with a partner we weren't really excited about. So we've been really proud of all of the products we've put forth, but we do feel like, there's been mismatches maybe in marketing support we've gotten from a partner. But I mean, that's really minor. It's not that big of a deal in the long run. I think that goes back to communication with partners is just important, being on the same page before you go into a product launch. This is, of course, talking about, collab partnerships. There's all different types of partnerships you can do as a brand.
You mentioned Broccoli, which if people don't know is this like really great cannabis magazine. Goop, you have Better Homes and Gardens more recently. This is like a very diverse array. You're not operating in like one sphere. Do you guys have like an internal rubric for the kinds of brands you want to work with? And are you going to them or are they coming to you?
They come to us, we go to them. Sometimes it's people we meet in real life and it just nets out in a really great, creative conversation. There are rubrics. Sometimes they are, more focused on the creative back end and making the partnership make sense from a dollars standpoint. And there might not always be alignment there. But I think one thing we care about at Piecework is that we can kind of geek out in a million different worlds and subcultures and find something to be happy and excited about. So, of course, there are brands that don't feel in alignment with us, but for the most part, we can get pretty excited about most things.
I feel like there's an interesting range in our tone that can go from more like vibey design to like total kitsch.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of space to play there. And kitsch has always been important to the brand ethos from the very, very beginning. We've celebrated it. We've played in that space. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there.
I mean, I think the brand can flex into Home and Garden is a great partnership with us. We just launched our puzzle with them and it was very successful, and it speaks to baking and interiors, and they're really iconic red plaid cookbooks, and everything about it feels very piecework. And then the other end of the spectrum, our first puzzle with Broccoli Magazine, it featured a bunch of flowers smoking joints, and that was also very piecework. They're not necessarily the same customer, but they're both piecework customers.
Totally. Piecework has also spawned, it was first of its kind when it came out, and it spawned a number of competitors. What's your relationship with the competition, or what feels like copycats?
I think that we look at, any on the nose copycat as a form of flattery. And
now we do. At first we were like,
you got there. There was a transition.
I mean, some of the other puzzle companies are doing incredible things, and I love them. And as a puzzle person, if I had more time for more puzzles in my life, I mean, I'm scrambling to keep up with our puzzles. I would love to work on some of their puzzles. So I think we're very much the more the merrier, as long as we're each all doing our own thing and, having fun playing alongside each other.
It's a nice take on all of this that, sort of even within this capitalist universe, that like there's room, and that it can kind of be mutually beneficial.
100%. And like I think our newer puzzle brands that are doing well or that are, sizable are not the ones that have copied from us directly. They're the ones that have their own identities, and they're doing great work, and they're doing great creative. So
I also
there's
think
room for differentiation.
I mean, I think all creativity is very derivative. We're all pulling mood boards and inspiration from whether the photos are 100 years old or from something you see on Instagram or Pinterest. And you're constantly putting things into your mind and, creating kind of like a mental pinboard of things. So I think there's going to be a really natural overlap in creative products in the marketplace.
You're 6 years in. How much of that time felt sink or swim?
When we started Piecework, someone gave me advice that, that there's a period at the beginning of every business that is sort of like, I think that they brought up the Oregon Trail in the pioneers days, but it's like you have to like get through and get across the country in your wagon in this like challenging period, but then eventually you'll get there. And it could be, a few months for a business. It could be a few years. It could be longer. For us, it was a couple of years. We launched the business in a really unique time because we only had 6 months before the pandemic. And then, demand for puzzles surged, and we were scrambling to keep up with the demand. And we, had to find the new manufacturers I mentioned, and it was sink or swim in a different way. It was a positive problem to have, but it threw our personal lives into chaos because we had to work around the clock, without sleeping, basically. I think that we've come out of that time period now. We've figured out how to be founders. We've figured out what team the business needs. The business is in its own kind of cadence now, and we've made it to Oregon to continue the metaphor.
Also, don't you live in Oregon?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Metaphorically and literally.
I think also in every business, it's the struggle of like, and I'm feeling this like Goop on my team, now at a totally different organization, is like how much support you need, how big your team needs to be for the size of the business. And that's really hard to ascertain. It's going to ebb and flow, and you want to have like just the right amount of help to support as much scaling and growth as you possibly can. But it's hard to know those things. So that was a struggle for us. There were times when our team was like just way too lean. It was just basically us. And then, we've got the team bigger, and, but then puzzles had a slight decline after like the COVID peak, and we had to figure out our new groove and evolve into new products and continue to grow our puzzle library, and just, and now we're in a good place. So it's just, it's hard to know that as a business owner.
It's kind of wild to look back, but for a long time we were doing, every customer service email, every social media response, every
PR.
We did our own PR when we launched. We were cold emailing journalists, and we did everything ourselves for a while. I mean, that's not entirely fair. We had people helping us, so I don't mean to make it seem like it was just us two, but there was so much that we're not doing now that we were doing. And we have grown really slowly and carefully. And I think what is working for us is that everyone on our team wears multiple hats. If I was going to give any advice around hiring, it's find people who are willing to be flexible and do more than one thing when you have a small business like ours, because it enables people to do way more than if they were hyper-focused.
What's harder, building a business or writing a novel?
Building a business for me. Writing a novel was a joy that also felt like pulling my hair out. But if pulling hair out is joyful, then that's writing a novel.
Okay. It's a nice note to end on.
Yeah.
Rachel, Jena, thank you so much for being here. So lovely.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh my God, thanks for coming. And thanks to you for watching. That's Rachel and Jena from Piecework Puzzles. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. Leave us a comment below with what you want to see in the next puzzle or linen napkin, or what you think of the horse toaster. I'm all for it. And we'll see you next time.